Hey everybody, welcome to Grit. Get ready, it's Tony's show. Tonight we have our special guest, someone I've been wanting to speak to for a few weeks now. His name is Adam Vina. Adam, how are you today?
I'm good, Tony. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So, you and I have a few things in common, and this is really why I wanted to just have a conversation with you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Adam Vina. I live in Monrovia. And I am fighting a battle for my son's gender. It started when my son was 2 years old, when I first received a text message of my son in a pink dress tutu, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing with this text message. I asked I showed my father. I said, "How could she do this to my son?" And I told her, I said, "Don't ever dress my son in girls' clothes." And probably about a year later, it was my son's third birthday, and he came up to me. It was his birthday party. We were potty training him at the time, and he said, "Dad, I got to go to the bathroom." I said, "Great, buddy." I said, "Do you need help, or do you want to do it by yourself?" He said, "No, I want to do it by myself." I said, "Great, buddy." So he went there. I said, "Let me know if you need any help." He went in there, used the restroom, came out and said, "I need help washing my hands." Washed his hands, and as we were leaving the restroom, that's when he told me that his mom bought him a pink dress. And I got down on one knee, the way I'm going to tell you and your followers. I got down on one knee, looked him in the eye very calmly. I said, "Buddy, you're a boy, not a girl, and boys don't wear dresses." And he said, "Okay, Daddy," and we went back to cake and ice cream. A couple of days later, I was pretty upset, and I sent out a group of text messages. And the group's of text message was no threats of violence, no, just angry text messages. And she was able to get a temporary restraining order put on me for me and my son.
Okay, so this started when he was 2 years old, right?
Yes, sir.
And were you married to your...
I was not married.
Oh, okay.
I was not married to her at all. We were just boyfriend and girlfriend. And, I was brought up in a pretty Christian home, and, the whole having sex before marriage was, always kind of beat into our heads as a kid. I'm a PK. I was practically born and raised in the church. My father, he was former military. He was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And then he was born and raised in Montebello area. And then he became the chaplain of the Union Rest Commission in downtown LA. And I spent a lot of time in downtown LA on Skid Row. And he really, basically street smarts, if you want to call it that. He really kind of scared me straight without him scaring me straight.
Right.
And he was pointing out stuff at a very young age. I was hanging out with, former drug dealers, former criminals, drug addicts, that kind of stuff. But my father raised me, if you want to say raised me right, and I have a lot of respect for him. And so I was raised in a very Christian home. And, having sex before marriage, was always beat in our head.
Right.
And so I had a kid out of wedlock. I know it's not the right thing. But it happened.
Right.
And I don't regret it at all. But Tony, I never would have thought this was a battle that I was going to have to fight.
Right.
If that makes sense to you.
It makes plenty of sense. And how old is he now?
Aiden is 6 years old now.
6 years old. Right.
6 years old. He goes, he's, according to his mother, he's full transgender. He is actually technically full transgender at 4 years old. I received an email from a concerned parent from the private school that I had him in, saying, "Adam, I think you have a right to know what's going on with your son." And the email that she had sent to all the parents just was completely shocking. I was in the cab of my work truck. I read it, and thank God I have a very understanding supervisor and superintendent. I called them on the phone, and I said, "Hey, I don't think I can make it through the rest of the day after what I just read." And basically the letter said that he's full transgender. He goes by a girl's name. He uses the girl's restroom, basically saying that if you have any questions about her, I have plenty of information for you parents to read. And it was, again, Tony, I never thought, out of all the things that I had to worry about when I had a kid, this was nowhere near, it was not even, it never even crossed my mind
Right.
that she was going to do this to my son, whether she did this to my son to get back at me because it's something that she knew that I wouldn't be able to accept or anything like that. It was just not on, it was not in space.
It's beyond comprehension, right?
Yes, sir.
So have you had did she talk to you about any of this beforehand?
No, I found out from my son.
So
I found out from my son, and I found out through a couple text messages that this was going on, and it's completely spiraled out of control over the last few years. I haven't physically held my son in 4 years because I'm not gender affirming.
Right.
I guess that's the new key trigger word is gender affirming.
Right, especially California.
Especially in California. But I am gender affirming. I'm affirming that my son was born a boy, and that's what he is.
Right.
He's not a girl.
So back to, like, we hear a lot about this happening in schools. Now, your son was a baby,
right,
for the most part. So do you have any idea what made her believe that your son was a girl? Is it? Do you have any idea?
I don't have any idea. Wait, let me backtrack. I have a feeling that she did something like this to get back at me. So she was never the one to kind of give up the motherly duties. Like if me and her wanted to go out, she always felt that if she wasn't watching my son or her other son, now mind you, I took on somebody else's responsibility even before my son was born. So I took on somebody else's responsibility, and he had special needs. He had autism. So I believe the autism really put a real strain on our relationship.
Right.
Because if anybody knows about autism, it's not the easiest thing to deal with. And again, I told her in court, and I've told her in person when we were still kind of together. I told her, I wish I had as much patience as you, to be able to deal with something like this. And autism is a very, very stressful thing to have to deal with, especially, taking on somebody else's responsibility and then having to deal with a special needs child.
Right.
And it put a lot of strain on our relationship, a lot of strain.
Now, is your son Aiden, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, is Aiden under the special needs program in school or?
No, as far as I know, no. I have no communication with my son because she has full and sole custody right now. The doctors I can't get any doctor information from her about him.
Right.
So we'll backtrack a little bit. In court, Judge Harvey Silverman out of Pasadena, family court judge, ordered a gender assessment to be done on my son. Aiden was 4 at the time, 3.5, 4. And I requested to be able to sit in on this assessment, and they denied me that. I went as far as hiring my own therapist to sit in on the assessment, not to sway left or right, but just to sit there and so I have a voice in this situation, and they denied that. And they also denied me a phone call. So for the last 4 years, Dr. Jonathan Juarez at a Children's Hospital of Los Angeles has not contacted me, the father, about what I think is going on with my son.
And that's a tragedy. When you think about it, I mean, you got to have both parents involved, whether they agree on a situation or not, involved in the process. And I can relate. I want to tell you a little about me.
Yeah.
I have a granddaughter who's got Down syndrome, the youngest one, special needs. And then I have the one that's 13 years old, who is a bright person, super smart. She skipped a grade. I mean, mentally, she is sharp as a tack. But she got caught up in the gender issue in school. And unbeknownst to us, she had changed her name in school, right? But we don't have a right to know, according to the school system in California. We don't have a right to know anything, right? And we found out that she changed her name She's changed it twice now since then.
Right.
Considers herself a male. And we had the same issue with my son's wife.
Right.
Right. Affirming all this. She became a cutter because of what she's going through. And it's a mental issue.
It
right?
really is.
And it's not treated that way, right?
No.
Right? Until you start cutting yourself, and then all of a sudden they realize that there's a problem, right?
And sometimes they probably don't even think there's a problem at that point either.
No, but
right.
It took that for them to realize that there's a problem.
Got you, right.
And I'm not talking about a major school district.
Right.
They live in Rolling Heights. That's a small school district, right?
Right.
They have 2 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. That's all they have. And that happened there. So it's happening everywhere, and people are naive to think that it's not happening.
Correct.
That there's not people trying to indoctrinate our kids.
Correct.
Showing them inappropriate materials, books. It's a constant battle. I have not been able to spend any time with my oldest granddaughter, and to me, she's still my granddaughter, for 3 years, right? Because she's afraid to be around me because I'm strict. I don't believe in that.
Right.
I think she needs help. She needs mental help, right?
Right.
Right. Now, finally, after so many years, she's involved in the IEP program in the school. Where it means she's getting help from the school counselor. She's been moved in the last 3 years to 4 or 5 different schools because she can't be around other people because she's already been convinced that she is something that she doesn't even know yet. As we're growing up, all of us go through this
phase.
Who we are, right? Is my body ugly? Or am I too thin? Am I too big? Right? Do I like boys? Everybody goes through some kind of issue as a child. And I say we as a society now in California, what we're saying is a child has a right to make a medical decision that they might regret when they're an adult.
And we're seeing that more and more.
Oh, obviously, yeah. I mean, I know people like that already, right? That, we're condoning this behavior instead of trying to treat what's really happening with our kids, right?
Right.
And in your case, a 3-year-old doesn't know crap.
No, sir.
Right?
No.
I mean,
that's been my biggest fight with this is that you're not in your granddaughter's case, you're not treating everything in between.
No.
With my son, and it sounds like with your granddaughter, they went from A to Z.
Mm-hmm.
But there's what happened to B, C, D, everything in the middle. Most doctors, if you come down with cancer, they're going to treat you accordingly. A, B, and C. Z is the final thing. They want to make sure. But in your granddaughter's case, and in my son's case, they're not treating the cause. They're not trying to figure out, okay, why is she or why is he feeling this way? Right. And that does more damage to the kids than anything else.
Well, because everybody's trying to make certain groups believe things. So I spoke a lot of school district meetings, right?
Right.
And every time I spoke about parental rights, they would come back at me with, you're against LGBTQT. And I would say, no, I'm saying parental rights. It doesn't matter if you have an LGBTQT child or not.
Right.
Parental rights. They need to know.
Exactly.
And I bring this up. If my child is absent from school, you're quick to call me to find out what's wrong with my child.
That's right.
Or if my child needs to take an aspirin, you can't give them one.
Right.
You have to call me so I could give it to them, right?
That's right.
But if they want to change their sex, you can do that. Right. You don't have to tell me.
And that's terrifying.
Right. It's more than terrifying because we're at a point now where we're co-parenting with people like Newsom and Pelosi. And I'm not about that life.
Or Weiner.
Right.
Or Scott Weiner.
Yeah. He's
Scott Weiner even came out. These are our kids.
Right.
No, sir, they're not your kids.
Right.
These are our kids, and they're not the government's kids.
And you know what's the scary thing? I saw a survey, right? 90% of California parents believe in parental rights. 90%, right?
Right.
What scares me is the 10% that don't care.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was collecting signatures for the Protect Kids bill that we were trying to get passed.
Right.
And in my hometown, I was trying to collect signatures. I collected 25 signatures in my hometown. I was spit on by another father who was pushing his daughter in a stroller, calling me transphobic. And I was thinking to myself, don't you want your daughter? You don't want your daughter changing with boys in the locker room. You don't want your daughter to get pummeled in sports by a male that thinks he's, something else. And that 10%, there's something scary about that 10% that
number scares the crap out of me, right? Because it should be 100% of parents care about their kids.
Right. Or even scarier that they're going along with the 10%, but they're not going along with the majority of the 90%. You know, I want to know what's going on with my kid. If my kid stubs his toe in school, I want to know about it. If my kid falls down, I want to know. I am entrusting my kid with you to teach him the basics, and I want to know about it. I want to know about everything. And for you to hide stuff from me, that should scare everybody. Why are you hiding stuff from the parents?
Well, everything's done under the auspices of DEI, right?
Right.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Right.
I know all about that because of my granddaughter who has Down syndrome, who we fight very hard for her to be included in a regular classroom, right? Because I want her to be exposed to people, right?
Absolutely.
Right? She's a sweetheart of a child, right?
Right.
She's very loving, very caring. She just has Down syndrome. That's it.
And all of them,
right?
all of them are.
Right. And all the kids love her in school, right? But I don't want her to have special treatment, right?
Right. Right.
I want her to be treated like everybody else.
That's awesome.
I want her to know what it's like to be one of us.
Right.
Right. And she is. She's very sweet, lovable. You know, her mental capability is not what it should be, but she's a sweet person.
That doesn't need. She does not need to be excluded from normal society.
No, and she doesn't need any kind of special treatment.
Right.
You know, I'm blessed that she's healthy. You know, she's got a good heart. The only thing is the extra chromosome. Right. So we know about inclusion. We belong to a group called Together is Better in Pasadena.
Okay.
For a long time, they handle kids with special needs, and they taught us a lot because you know we knew when she was coming that there was a problem. The family as a whole decided we're not going to have an abortion. We're going to have the baby,
right? And
we're going to take care of it. Whatever God gives us, we're going to take care of it. And she was born, and she was a godsend. And I when she see every weekend I see her,
right?
I get to see her every weekend, and I'm reminded of the first couple of days when we didn't think she was going to make it, right?
Right.
But I look at her now, and that's my motivation to do anything, right?
That's awesome,
right? And that's really why I wanted to talk to you, because there's not many people like us, right?
Right.
You have two kids, one with special needs and the other one.
Right.
I have my granddaughter with special needs.
The second one was my kind of like my stepson.
But you took him,
yes,
right?
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, that's your son.
Yeah.
Regardless at this point. And I have my youngest granddaughter, and I have my older one that we're having issues with, who was my cherry, my first one.
Right.
Right. I was enamored with that little girl from day one. Right. And because I don't affirm, right, I'm not a good person. Right.
Right.
And it's not that I don't affirm. If you want to do it when you're 18, okay, that's fine. You're an adult.
Exactly.
Do what you want.
You've lived a long enough life to know these things.
But if you're 11 years old,
no,
you don't know. I mean, I even when I talk to her mom, I'm like, she doesn't even know how to wipe her behind properly.
Right.
How are we going to let her make decisions about this kind of stuff?
Right.
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 And then at 18 or 19 or even 20, 21, regrets.
Right.
Right. That I should have, could have, would have. And that's the problem, that we're always trying to give special interest groups more and blame other people for what's happening. Well, it's your fault that when we did the Glendale, when we spoke at the school district, Antifa was there against us, right? And I'm sure you heard the story.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I've seen the videos.
Right. We were the bad guys, not Antifa.
Always.
Right. We were the bad guys.
Always.
Right. And that day is the day that I said, no. I said, screw this.
Yeah.
No, we have to push back. And it doesn't matter. I've been to the Burbank school board and spoke. I spoke at LAUSD, and it's still the same from the people in the school board.
Yeah.
Right?
And I went to one Glendale school board meeting, just to sit back and listen. And the one thing that I noticed in that school board meeting is the disgust on the board members' face when parents were speaking out against this. I was completely thrown back by that. You're treating these parents with such disgust, and all they're doing is trying to protect their kids. And you should not be showing disgust to parents. And all the school board meetings that I see that post up online on Instagram, the school board members, except for a select few school boards, they all have this like smug look on their face, especially when fathers are reading those disgusting books. They don't want to hear about it, but yet again, we see it all the time, but yet it's okay to be shown, but we can't talk about it.
When I spoke to you earlier about this book, Lawn Boy, right?
Right.
It's about, young boys having oral sex, right?
Right.
And it's read to 8-year-old kids in school, right? Now, I don't know about you, but when I was in school, the last thing I was thinking about was that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I just wanted to be a kid, play basketball, play kickball, handball, whatever it was, ride my bike.
Yeah.
I wasn't even interested in girls till the 10th grade in high school.
Right.
Because I just wanted to play. But we've taken that away from our kids, right? We don't want them to be kids anymore, right?
Right.
And part of it is our fault because, we allow them to have phones. We allow them to have iPads, right? And they get on social media, and then all their friends have it. And if they don't have it, they start complaining and whining. You go to a restaurant, see families. Half the family's on their phone or on an iPad, right? We've lost touch with the family unit in this country.
And that's why I always say, too, when I was doing my podcast or when I do speak, I always end with, it's time to bring back the dinner table.
Right.
I learned by sitting at the dinner table. I hated sitting at the dinner table because I wasn't out with my friends.
Right.
But now that I'm older, maybe a little bit wiser, I realized how important that dinner table was. I sat down with mom, dad, and my brother, and we talked. And we learned about each other. Mom and dad learned about us, what's going on in school, what's going on in our lives. I tell everybody, it's time to bring back the dinner table, turn the cell phones off, put the cell phones or iPads in another room, and sit down and talk. I know California has made it very difficult for the family unit to be a family unit.
Right.
They made it so expensive to live here. Parents are working 2-3 jobs just to keep the roof over their head. But if you guys can set aside 10, 15 minutes a night and just sit down and talk without cell phones, I guarantee you, you're going to learn so much in that 15, 20-minute conversation.
Well, I grew up in Highland Park, Northeast LA, right? Part of my life. And it was a culture shock for me.
Right.
I came from Puerto Rico, so it was a big culture shock, how it really was here. Because, I was used to sitting down with my grandparents, having dinner, and then they would let me go play, be back at this certain time, right? I respected my neighbors, right?
Absolutely.
If my neighbor came to me and said, Tony, your son Mark did this, can you talk to him? I wouldn't be mad at my neighbor. I would talk to my son.
Right.
And I think nowadays, not that kids don't deserve rights, right? Because I'm not saying that. What I am saying is they're kids, right?
Right.
And kids are buttheads.
Absolutely.
Right? We were kids. We know that, right?
Yeah.
We lied to our parents all the time, right? If we can get away with something, we do it, right? And so kids are going to be kids, and kids are going to lie, but we got to hold them accountable for their actions, whether it's good or bad, right?
Right.
And we should coach and mentor them when they make a mistake. Okay, let's figure it out. But we don't do that anymore, right?
No.
And it again, I keep blaming all of us because we've gotten away from the family unit, right?
Yeah.
Where we could talk about things and discuss opinions. When I have a 13-year-old granddaughter who calls herself a progressive, right? What the hell is she doing in politics at this age?
Right.
Right. That's something that's coming from somebody else indoctrinating her, the nonsense of the adults, right?
Wait.
Right? Because I never thought about any politics until I was 18 and I registered to vote.
Right.
That was the first time. Before that, I could care less about politics.
Yeah,
right?
there was no politics in my house at all. The only time I ever heard about politics was when I would go over to my grandma and grandpa's house and Rush Limbaugh was on.
Right.
So I always say I'm a Rush baby, but it wasn't pushed on me.
Right.
I just heard it in the background, and then I became a huge fan of Rush Limbaugh. But, I made my own decisions, my own, I guess, political decisions on my own at a way older age.
And that's the problem, that it just, my interpretation of what's happening is that people in certain positions want to influence our kids so that they can control our kids, right?
Right.
Because ultimately, if you can control the youth, you control everything, right?
Well, you see what happened in communist China.
Yeah.
They separated the family and they put the kids in indoctrination camps and then let them go. And they were buttheads to the parents.
Yeah.
And that's what I see now is the separation of the family here in California. I can't speak for the rest of the country, but I can definitely see California is separating the families and separating the kids from the parents.
Right. And I think a lot of it is driven by people in high positions, like the school board. I don't blame the teachers per se.
Right.
I blame the school board and that leadership, because they're the ones that tell the teachers what they need to do. And the teachers are afraid to say no.
Right.
And I understand that, right?
Right.
But at some point, we have to do something to protect our children, right? And
Yeah.
whether my granddaughter becomes a he when she's 21 or 22, that doesn't mean I'm going to love her any less,
Right.
right? But you need to allow me to be part of that process and as a family unit, work with the child to figure out who they really are, right?
Yes.
Not necessarily say you're going to be this, but let's find out through conversation about what the child, who he or she really is,
Right.
where they want to go, and what they're confused about. Because
Right.
one thing is being confused about your gender identity. The other thing is cutting yourself, right? When you start cutting yourself, that is a mental issue, right? Why are you cutting yourself, right? Is it because you're insecure, because you're angry at yourself?
Right.
Why do you have problems with everybody at every school you go to? The problem is not everybody. The problem is probably that particular child, right? Something going on, but we're not doing everything we can to help that child.
No.
Right?
No.
So it's on us to keep pushing back, because until we're allowed, and I'm going to say allowed because I think the government, specifically in California, is passing bills that are I'm just going to say tying our hands when it comes to our children.
Yeah.
You go to court, you fight with a judge, they look at you like you're crazy because of your beliefs, because you're not condoning whatever they want to condone, right? Right. And it's a bad thing nowadays to not agree with the government, right? If you don't agree with them, you're bad.
Right.
You know, not that I'm a big Trump fan,
Right.
but if you're a MAGA, you're evil, right? But if you're Kamala, you're okay.
Right.
How does that make sense?
Right. Right.
So, you know, parents need to stand up for their kids.
Oh, parents I think parents have no choice but to stand up and be more loud.
Right. And the big shame to me, and I hate to say this, I see more moms than dads do it, right? And that bothers me because I think dad is the key person in that family unit.
Yeah.
Right. And I know mom runs a household and mom runs everything.
Right.
But you got to have that dad figure in that family.
Right.
And if they're not willing to stand up with the moms and fight, the moms are not going to win this battle alone.
No.
They can't win it alone.
No.
Right?
No. I think fathers and men in general, you know what? I think why we're probably not seeing enough fathers and men standing up, because I truly believe that men have, we need a morale boost for men in this country. And I think men in our country have been so demasculated over the last few years that you don't have that tough guy persona anymore. You don't, I mean, you look on TV that the kids don't have any, especially boys don't have a tough guy to look up to.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with being a tough guy. You know what I'm saying? I truly believe that, you know, my father, he was a tough guy. He got saved and everything like that, but he still has that tough guy persona in him. Right. And there's nothing wrong with being a tough father or anything like that. Men are raised to be the hunters, the gatherers, and the warriors. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go back. Men have been demasculated for a very, very long time. And I think the state, I'll just say California, in my opinion, they want to use toxic masculinity.
Right.
You know,
as an excuse for everything.
Yeah, they say, oh, toxic masculinity is evil. It's not evil. It's good to have some type of toxic masculinity, you know? And again, kids don't have anybody to look up to anymore. My heroes were, you know, it's funny to say I looked up to like John Wayne's. I watched, you know, the Davy Crockett movies, right. You know, that kind of stuff. We had people like MacArthur, Patton. We had these strong male role models to go by. And I don't see that anymore. I don't want my kid looking up to LeBron James. I don't want my kid looking up to half of the guys in Hollywood. Right. You know, in my opinion, they're all sissies. But I think men have been demasculated, and I think that's why we're not seeing that the more fathers, and maybe they're scared to speak up. Because I truly believe if fathers spoke up or more men spoke up, I think a lot more stuff would get accomplished.
And I mean, everything in general, this is the crazy part. So even groups, right?
Right.
Like you see Encino Republican Women's Group, right?
Right.
There's no men.
Right.
Right. So it's kind of a weird thing that's happened throughout the years where we've just kind of given up. and lets everybody else make decisions for us. And I think not just grown men, but I think young adult males, we're not teaching them right. There's nothing wrong with opening a door for a person, right?
No.
Right? There's nothing wrong with saying, good morning, sir, good morning, ma'am,
No.
right? It's those little things that we're missing, right?
Right.
I mean, sometimes I say good morning to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy.
Yes, Tony.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just, sorry, my bad. I don't mean to offend you, but
Right.
people get offended, even if you're driving, if you're looking and you happen to look at somebody, sometimes people just flip you off to flip you off.
Right.
Right. For no reason, no apparent reason.
Yeah.
So we've allowed the leadership, and I would say leadership in California, to not just, even before COVID, to separate us, right?
Right.
Whether it was based on your color or your skin, based on, you have that white guilt going on now with people, right? Most of the people defending reparations are white people, right? I had an incident with one of the people that I dropped some of my flyers off. He asked me about reparations. I gave him my answer. He didn't like it. Right? I'm a racist. I'm like, well, first of all, California was a free state.
Right.
So why should I give reparations with taxpayer money to anybody in California?
Right.
Now, if you really want reparations, then go to the Democratic Party, who are the ones who fought to keep slavery. Right. Don't talk to me about it because I had nothing to do with it.
And a Republican's the one that freed everybody.
Right. So, there's a lot of confusion because people get caught up with these other people that really don't care about us down here at our level, right?
No.
Newsom doesn't care about us, right?
No.
Right? Pelosi doesn't. Wiener definitely doesn't. All he cares about is his sexual agenda, right?
There's something wrong with that too, but
no, there is a lot. Most of the bills that come out about pedophilia and what do you mean pedophiles being? If you're a pedophile, it's okay. That's what he's saying with his bills, right?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not. I don't buy that crap. Right.
Right.
Right. We have a lot of rules and laws in California that are protecting the wrong people. Right.
Yes.
Instead of protecting the people we need to protect.
Right.
And those are our kids. Right.
Yeah.
You need to allow parents to be parents. Right. And if you know they're not being good parents, there's systems in place to take care of those kids. Right. You can't do this across the board. You don't have any rights. Your kids are my kids.
Right. Just because you yell at your kid does not mean that you're a bad parent and he or she needs to be taken away.
Well, it's funny you use the word yell. So I scolded my grandchild 3 years ago.
Right.
Being disrespectful to my parents. And from that day on, barely any contact. Now, when she needs something, though,
of course,
right, I get a quick text.
Right.
Opa, can you, kind of thing. So it's disheartening and it truly hurts my feelings more than anything, right?
Yeah.
Because I think I was good to them, good to her from day one.
Right.
And I've never been mean.
No.
I just have certain things that you need to respect your elders, period, right?
Right.
If you have a problem, you bring it to my attention and I'll deal with it.
That's right.
Right? Kids, I'm sorry to say this, you don't have rights.
Right.
Right? I'm teaching you right now. You have to learn, right?
That's right.
You have to learn how to do things. You just can't, because a kid is a kid, right?
Right.
I mean, when my sister was dating, right, my parents didn't know. I knew.
Right.
But I kept quiet because she wanted me to keep it quiet.
Right.
Her and I would leave the house together in high school, and I would drop her out with a boyfriend, and I would tell her, okay, meet me here at this time.
Right.
Because if you're not here, then you're on your own, right?
Yeah, you're gonna get a whooping.
Right. Mom's gonna know because I'm just gonna go home. And we did that for a couple of years. Was that wrong? Yeah, it was wrong, right?
But I think that's what brothers and sisters do. What brother and brothers do. They cover.
Right.
Yeah.
So as kids, we want to get away with as much as we can, right? So when I hear kids nowadays complaining and whining, it upsets me because they want to get away with a lot more.
Right.
Right. Not just the typical lies. I didn't do my homework, or I did my homework, or I changed my grade on my report card, kind of thing. Right.
Right.
They're way out there because their friends are saying it's cool to do this and it's cool to do that.
They want everything handed to them,
but they don't understand the repercussions of everything.
No.
Right. At 12 or 13 years old. Look, when does the brain mature in a man? I think it's 24.
Something like that.
24 years old. So how are we going to let a 13-year-old, in your son's case, a 3-year-old,
Right.
make a decision that's a life-changing decision? Right?
Yeah, I think that's the scarier part. I mean, I've got 6 years before all that stuff can get implemented, but it's definitely being talked about, which is why I kind of fell into a little bit of a depression, knowing that reading some of the stuff that's being told to my son's mother, and then knowing what the repercussions of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones do to a body, and you look at Jeff Younger, man. Jeff Younger's out of Texas. He's been fighting 10 years for his son, James. He's $1.5 million invested into fighting for his son. And here in the next few months, the judge out of Los Angeles, Stanley Moss Courthouse, is going to rule whether or not they can start his 12-year-old son on puberty blockers. And the whole reason why they're even here in California, because they're originally from Texas, if you want to talk about bad bills, SB 107 is probably one of the worst bills that we've got here in the state of California. And if nobody knows what SB 107 is, California made California a transgender sanctuary state. Right. So if your state does not agree, won't provide puberty blockers or affirm, they can come over to California and they can get it all taxpayer on the taxpayer. And just to tell you, children's hospitals make $4.2 million just on the gender stuff.
People don't know that.
No, children's hospitals at the gender clinics, they're making $4.2 million. And I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess about 90% of that is taxpayer money. So whether you're against it or not, you're paying for it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Whether you speak out on it or not, you're still paying for it. Our tax dollars are going to pay, are there to pay for puberty blockers. Mind you, that Lupron, the one that they give to the pedophiles,
right?
It's like, what did I see? It was like $54,000 for the medication. $54,000. There's another one that's over $100,000 for the puberty blockers. So whether you stay silent or not, or you speak out, you're still paying for it. I couldn't believe when Jeff Younger said that on my podcast. He said Children's Hospital make $4.2 million on genders, and they have a special place downtown LA is the Gender Clinic for Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. But they call it the Adolescent Youth Clinic.
Wow.
And anytime I call over there to find out what they're doing to my son, about a year ago, the nurse said, "How old is your son?" I said, "My son is 5. She's all, "What is he doing here?" I said, "I don't know. You tell me." She's all, "This is for adolescent youth." Again, ma'am, you tell me why my 5-year-old son is at a gender clinic.
Yeah, it's the same issue with schools, right?
Right.
A lot of older people my age, they don't care, right? Because they don't have any kids in school.
Right.
But I remind them, you're paying taxes, right?
Right.
So that's your money. Care because that's our future, right? These are the kids that are going to be our future leaders, right? And if we don't take care of them with whatever mental issues they have or personal issues they have, if we don't counsel them and sometimes just put our arms around them and say it's going to be okay, right?
That could do
something as simple as that can keep these kids from going the way they're going.
Right.
Because the last thing I want to see is somebody that does it when they're young, 13 or 14, and then at 21 they regret it.
A majority of them do.
And they want to come back and they have medical issues because of what surgeries they had and whatever blockers they took, right? And it ruins them forever.
Yeah.
It ruins them forever.
I'm going to pull something up.
Okay.
So we see what happened with Chloe Cole.
Yes,
Chloe Cole's regretting it. I shouldn't say regretting, but she's detransitioning,
right? And
she's speaking out onto the harmful effects of these. You got Matt Ray. There's a documentary coming out called Leaving Amy. He's talking about the bad side effects of these puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. And I had him on my podcast, and he was saying that's we'll go to social media. He said that looking at social media glorified the transgender stuff. Mm-hmm. He saw that that these transgender males they glorified it on Instagram. They glorified it on TikTok. And then when he finally went through with it, it was nothing like what they showed on TikTok. He's had surgery. I mean, he has seizures. He's had, I mean, some of the stuff that goes through when you get on puberty blockers is absolutely, I screenshotted this from Gays Against Groomers because they posted it on X today. Transitioning children causes bone loss. It causes stunted IQ, cancer, lung damage, stroke, genital neuropathy, suicidal anxiety. So we're putting, and Will Ferrell's on the cover talking about it. And you're taking this innocent child, you're pumping them full of these pills, a normal child, a healthy child, and now you're causing them sickness. You're causing them pain. You're causing them suffering. If they had mental issues before, now they're going to have major mental issues. And again, it goes back. It's going to keep the revolving door money going until forever.
And it's funny you talk about that, right? So when I was a kid, we had, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 vaccines to go to school, right? There's like 24 now, right?
There's 29.
And I truly believe this, right? What made America great was the family unit,
Yes.
right? The family unit was the key to everything, right?
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent, right? It was the family unit that kept everything together.
Yes.
And if you break that up, we don't have an America anymore, right?
No.
Right? We have some form of nonsense governmental control over everything, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't believe in a lot of the conspiracies, but I do believe that the government is trying to control us to a point where we're not going to be able to make any decisions without their permission, right? Kind of like housing, right? Think about it. Every communist or socialist country, everybody lives in apartments.
Right.
Right?
Right.
People don't own property.
I never even thought of that until you said that.
People don't own properties, right? Everybody lives in an apartment, right?
Yeah.
I've talked to people from Ukraine. I've talked to people from Korea, China. That's all they knew. The government provided them the apartment, right?
Right.
They didn't have to pay for it. So, of course, that's control, right? They're telling you you're going to live here. This is how you're going to live. And then you're going to go to work where I tell you to work, and you're going to take the pay that I give you, and you're going to be happy about it, right? And if you program people that way generation after generation, then it's a normal routine, right?
Yep.
Why did we break away from England? We didn't like being told what to do.
That's right. And we started Revolutionary War off of what, a 2%, 3% tax on, and now we're being taxed 40%.
Right.
You know?
So I think because we've gotten lazy and complacent, and they've passed laws slowly, right? Slowly taking away rights that you didn't see it coming, right? Because we believed in our government, right? We trusted these people that we elected to office. And when I talk about the leaders, I always tell people why I left the Army. I left the Army because of George Bush. He was a Republican, right?
Right.
But he was a horrible president.
Right.
He was a liar. He's a liar. He was a liar. Right. Colin Powell was a liar also, just like he was. That's the reason I could have stayed 6 more years, and I left because the leadership in the military sucked, plain and simple, right?
Yeah.
They were liars. They lied to the American people, and we kept voting for these people, and we clapped for these people. Right?
Yeah.
These people don't care about us.
They don't.
Right? If you want true leadership out there, you need to get your neighbor and let them get elected and let them run because they know what's happening on the ground level.
Yes.
These yahoos like Newsom, who was born into money, he made all his money in oil, right? And now he wants to shut down the oil companies.
What does he know about a blue collar guy?
Nothing.
A blue collar family.
Nothing.
And that's what our country was based off of, is blue collar guys.
Yep.
Blue collar guys help. I mean, some of them were attorneys, that kind of stuff, but they were farmers. The Declaration of Independence was written so everybody could understand it. There was no big words. Wasn't difficult to read. They wrote it so everybody could understand it.
Right. And I think that's, I think we just need common sense in life general, right?
Yeah.
If you can't afford to do something, don't do it.
Right.
Right. There was talk about, giving the illegal immigrants $150,000 to buy a home.
Right.
If we have that kind of money to give to them, why can't we help our own?
Exactly.
Right. We should be able to help our own if we have that kind of money, right?
Yeah.
It's taxpayer money, so why can't we help them, right? Why don't we know where $24.9 million went for the homeless? Why don't we know?
Why don't we know where 300,000 children went?
Yeah. We need to fight, and it's up to the farmers, the blue collar people.
Yeah.
Because the white collar people aren't going to help us.
No, because they're so disillusioned. They've been so separated from I guess the ground, that they're not making rational decisions. Again, you said it earlier when we were talking, everything is based off of feelings and emotions.
Right.
They're not basing anything off of facts. They're not basing anything off of anything. We need to get back to common sense, and we need to get back to, facts. Leave the emotions and feelings out of this. And I've said that in my court case. I said, you've based this whole court case off of feelings and emotions. Not one time have you ever brought any facts or evidence into this case to show that I'm a bad father.
Well, because in California, really, they don't have to, right?
No.
All they have to say is, you're bad. That's it.
Right.
That's all. Or your child has to say is, he's mean because he doesn't affirm me.
Right.
And that's enough for our judicial system to say, you're bad. Stay away, right?
Right.
Which is wrong, right? We need to discipline our kids. We need to discipline ourselves. We need to fight for what's right.
Yes.
And we just can't. And I know it's hard, right? Trust me, I know it's hard, right? But we have to fight for the kids, right? And every time we get hit, we just need to get up.
Yeah.
Right? And keep pushing back. And we have to educate people. We have to tell them what's really happening, because people really don't know.
But we need guys like you. We need guys like Alex. We need guys like I talk to her all the time. She's running up in the Stockton area from Freedom Angels.
Denise,
thank you. We need people like that. We need people like you guys that have been in the trenches to get in there. Because if we keep getting Scott Wieners and Newsoms and Pelosi's and 90% of Sacramento votes against what 90% of the population want,
right?
We need the blue collar guys and women to stand up and I guess help take back California.
Well, this is the beginning. Regardless of again what happens in my election, I'm in the fight to the end, and I hope that I know, again, I get it,
right?
But we have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Yes,
and really more than anything, educating people on what's really happening, like the books in school, right?
Right.
A lot of people still don't believe me. I had a guest here on the show bringing me books to show them online about the books that are being spread out in the schools, right?
Right.
And it's not book banning. They like to turn it around into book banning.
Mind you, the only book they ever banned was in 1963. You know what book that was?
The Bible.
The Bible.
Right. So that I knew. But it's funny how they try to twist everything around like that. And it's not banning books.
No.
It's simple things like Burbank had that whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Cross-dressers dancing on kids' laps, putting a condom on a banana. What is a kid? And parents, why would you take your child there? Right?
Yeah.
And I've always said this. My son is over 40. I have never taken him to an adult dancing place.
No.
And he's never taken me.
Right.
Right? There's some things that are just not appropriate for children.
That's right.
And you don't do that.
No.
Right? As crazy as his bachelor party got, we went to Hooters.
Right.
That was it, right?
Right.
There was nothing crazy. Why does an 8-year-old have to have a transgender? Or why does a politician in Burbank have to get spanked by a crossdresser at an elementary school, right?
Yeah.
Those are things that I can't relate with anymore, right? Because it's just ridiculous to me.
I don't recognize the United States anymore.
Well, if people like you don't keep fighting, we're not going to recognize it.
Right.
Right. It's going
Right.
to get worse.
Right.
And I think it's up to people like us, right? And like you said, Denise, Alex, right?
Right.
There's Tracy,
Benny. We got Benny, Brennan too.
yeah, Tracy
Yeah.
Schroeder, a school teacher. That whether you have faith in Christianity or you're Catholic or you're Jewish, whatever your religion, it doesn't matter. Just have faith
Right.
in people, and let's just be kind,
Yeah.
right? And let's just, I'm not saying kumbaya, but let's just hug and say, we got to do the right thing for the kids.
Yeah.
It's too late for me, but it's not too late for them.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, you can go even deeper with what they're doing to the kids. In a few years, we're not going to have a fighting force for the United States.
No, don't get me going there. But
yeah.
No,
But
you're
those are
right.
the things I look at when I see the kids.
Right.
When I'm coming home from work, I'm like, holy crap! Like, who's going to defend us if something bad goes down?
Right.
Or if people that we do have in there right now, are they going to be able to pull the trigger if needed? But
as an old soldier, I would tell you
right.
that I would not be comfortable going to combat with what we have now.
Right.
I would not be comfortable.
And that says,
right?
That's scary to hear.
Because I want to come back in one piece.
Right.
I don't want to have to worry about somebody's feelings.
Right.
Or not liking the food we're eating because it's not something that they want, or it's raining, or it's too cold.
Right.
Right. Or Tony, you looked at me the wrong way.
Right.
I'm not about that life.
Right.
If you're a warrior, you got to be a warrior.
Right.
Right. You can't just be DEI and everything. Right.
Yeah.
There's no diversity, equity, and inclusion. No. Right. We're going to war. You got to fight.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want DEI. I'm going to be flying the next couple weekends. I don't want DEI to be play any part in that pilot's life.
No, I wouldn't either. Right.
Or the mechanic.
Right. So I think people like you, we have to recruit more people that think like us.
Right.
Right. In order to affect change. And the way to do that is by spreading the message.
Right.
And showing proof, right? I know it's kind of cumbersome to sometimes show proof to people, but we have to because they don't believe it. Right. Like I told you about that book, Long Boy.
Yeah.
Right? I wasn't believed. I had to get the book, go back to that school and show them the book.
Yeah.
And it was stamped with their library stamp on it. Right. Right. So
oh my gosh.
So even though it's stamped, they denied it until I showed it, and then I couldn't read it because
it's offensive.
It's offensive to read, right? So
for adults,
yes,
but not for kids.
Right. For kids, it's okay.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to educate the public in any avenue we can, whether it's social media, whether it's speaking engagements, whatever it is.
I think it's getting harder and harder on social media. I mean, I'm so shadow banned on social media. It's not even funny.
X is probably the only place we can go.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about switching over. All my followers are on Instagram, but I'm thinking about switching over to X,
right?
And just paying X to be able to get my stuff out because I posted Gavin Newsom's phone number, and I got hit for false information. And I appealed it, and I said, Instagram, you could go on the internet, Google, type in Gavin Newsom, you get his phone number, you can get his home address. You can get it's all public information. Right. How is that false information? Yeah. But I think the other way I think we're going to save our kids, I know it's difficult, is if parents decide to pull their kids out of the school districts.
Right.
They get paid by the attendance. If they lose 200,000 kids, that's going to be a huge, huge hit on them. And we're pushing a bill for 2026, the CEO Act. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
I didn't bring any information with me. I'll text you it.
Okay.
Basically, what the CEO Act is, basically almost like school choice.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fund that was set up in '98 that money goes towards. But a parent, if you've got 2 kids, you get $17,000 per year. And if you've got 2 kids, you get $17,000 per kid.
Mm-hmm.
So say the private school or whatever you decide, homeschool or private school or anything like that, say the school is $7,000. You take that $7,000 out of an account. They call, the school gets that money, right? You can't touch it. You can't go below it on a Bentley or a new iPhone or anything like that. And you can choose what school your son or daughter go to. And then that $10,000 that's left over will accrue interest over the year. and then you'll get another 17,000 after that. And it goes all the way up until the child is 18. If you still have money left over, I believe you can use it to
go to college, I think. Yeah.
Go to trade school, or you can pass it on to somebody else. So I think that's one way that we could really, I guess, stick it to the state of California, is if we could get that bill passed, and have parents be able to choose, where your kids go to school.
And that's a good bill. And the other warning I want to give you is, there is a move to pass a bill right now from the state Senate to give schools, instead of money per student in attendance, to give them straight money, right?
Right.
And that's going to hurt parents that want to take their kids out for school choice. So it's definitely super critical that we push that bill to help parents, because I think parents should decide what school their kids go to. It's taxpayer money, so it's their money to do whatever they choose to.
Right.
They can do it. And again, back to my granddaughter, they have a self-determination program that's sponsored by the federal government that gives the parents the right to decide what kind of treatment your child needs, right? As an example, my granddaughter loves horses, right? Instead of ballet dancing like the state wants to do, or singing or piano lessons, she doesn't like that. So she rides a horse every Wednesday for 2 hours.
That's awesome.
She takes care of the horse. She brushes, cleans him, walks him, right? Under the self-determination program, the parents decided that's the kind of therapy they want her to have, which is amazing, right? So it can be done, right? It just takes a big fight, and we have to keep fighting, Adam.
Yeah.
We have to keep fighting.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I want to thank you for coming today, Adam.
Thank you.
It was great to finally sit down with you and talk to you face to face.
Yeah.
Let's definitely stay in touch.
Yeah.
Because I'm in this fight for the long run, right? It's not just a short run for me and my family, or your family.
Right.
It's for all of us. We have to do this.
Yeah.
We got to take care of the family unit. That's the only way we can solve all these issues.
Yeah.
Families always should come first. The government should come second.
That's right.
To all that. So
yeah.
I want to thank you for giving me your time today.
Thank you, Tony.
And then to the audience, thank you for joining Grit. I know it's been a while, but get ready. Tony's back. And listen, pay attention to what's happening. The government does not care about us at all. So let's keep that in mind. Have a good night, and thank you for being on Grit.